Welcome, everybody, to my channel. My name is Margaret. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author, and you're on Booktube. So, what are we talking about today? Well, I usually talk about books, reading them, or books, writing them. But today, I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but stay with me. It is actually relevant. A month or so ago, I was giving you all the tea about my recent research trip to the UK. And I talked about where I went, how I planned it, and the important highlights of that trip and how successful it was, but also a little rushed. And one of the comments I got was about traveling solo. So I thought I would do a Q&A session that talks a little bit about my travels solo and what that's like, some of the main obstacles that people have, and how I get around those. Or maybe they're not obstacles at all. So I got a lovely bunch of comments on Instagram to answer my stories, as well as on YouTube on my community tab. So thank you for all who responded. Um, and if you're new here and curious about the topic, sit down, stay a while, get yourself a cup of tea. I neglected to get mine, but I'm watching a crow outside who has decided to pull up a chair. He's got something rather big in his mouth. I'm not sure what it is, but everyone's welcome, crows and people alike. Um, Traveling solo. So what I asked was what is preventing people from traveling solo, because it felt like there was a hesitation to do this. It was allowed, was it easy, was it comfortable, and all these things. So I wanted to just I don't know, take down those targets one by one and talk with people who may have had those concerns, and probably tell you about some travel stories that I've had. So that was my idea of fun for today's live stream. I just wanted to say hello to people in the chat. We've got Luna's Mystical Delights, which is Luna Nix Frost. Lovely to see you. Glad I caught you on the Instagram minute of live that I did to try to get people's attention. And that's Nicole trying out a new channel name. I like it. Cat Paro Zealot here to say hello. Yeah, she loves the username too. Very nice. Yes, I did have a lot of fun in the UK. There were various decision trees, and so maybe some of those will come up during the questions today. Jocelyn Carter, hello, author friend, lovely to see you. And yeah, thanks for the username, love it. All right, and if at any point you have questions, please pop them in the chat. So I'll start with the results and what I got back anonymously from my responses, which was money, 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 money. And then we had a few fear, 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 safety, 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 which is pretty much the same thing. Excuse me a second. I had chocolate right before this. Apparently ill-timed chocolate. It is possible. I didn't think it was possible. And so I'm taking those as the main two. And then I've got a third leg, which is about like awkwardness or like social disapprobation is what I called it. So we'll talk a little bit about that, especially at the end. And then there were a couple things that I noticed, camps that things fell into. There are some things that are practical questions. How do you even carry your luggage if you're going to take like 3 bags? Well, I don't take 3 bags. That's the answer. Or psychological barriers. Things like, what am I supposed to do sitting by myself at a table at a restaurant? I wouldn't know what to do with myself. This is the psychological part. So let me know if you are in one of these camps. It's more of a practical problem to find a solution to, or if it's more a psychological barrier to feeling at ease and confident in your environment, because both are valid. Hi, Jim. Nice to see you. Up late where you are. Traveling alone, you tend to travel further as you don't need to compromise with a partner or group. Okay, and so the questions I asked people were about what prevents you from traveling solo, but I did get a few responses that were in the other direction saying nothing, or I don't know what took me so long, but now that I do, it's great. And what they say, the number one positive benefit is no compromise. Like you do what you want and you make your choices on your own. So, yeah, that's definitely the highlight. And so I'm glad to see it represented by Jim. Yes, CatPod left a very thorough comment. I did include that in my results. So I'm going to cover that when we go into, let's see, where did I put them? Some are practical. And you also brought up traveling with a disability, which is something that I don't have experience in, but I definitely wanted to like pin that in the comments. So yeah, very valuable. Thank you. Jocelyn says money and safety, the top two, right? It's a practical issue, and money and safety are important. Definitely. I usually travel with Lauren and worry about money and ensuring things are accessible. Yeah. Yes. Got your answers. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the first two first, and then go into practical and psychological. Money. Money. So when I ask the question, what is preventing you from traveling solo? I sort of mean if you want to travel and you don't have anyone to go with, why don't you go on your own? So if you think about it, money is not part of that equation because if you are thinking it's more expensive to travel on your own, maybe you have the experience that I don't have traveling with a sugar daddy, and that's like been your experience, and that's wonderful. When I was younger, I traveled with family, of course, and that is sort of a similar situation where you're not concerned with the money. But in terms of traveling with someone or in a group and traveling alone, CatPod did bring up the point of single supplements, and I'll get to that. That's a detail, but I wanted to highlight the prices that are not more expensive if you're on your own. So basically, airfare, you're not going to get a deal with traveling with more than one person. Train tickets, bus tickets, those kinds of things, it's per person. There's not a discount for more than one. Although there is if you get a room and you're sharing a room on a train, like a roomette, that would be a discount, just like at a hotel. Car rental is a discount, so that's cheaper when you're with someone else. So there's that if you're sharing that cost, as well as taxis, that's a share thing. Fee and entry if you're going to museums, if you're going to galleries, if you're going to, sites. It's the same if you're on your own or with another person. You each have to pay the same amount, so it's not any more expensive going on your own. And then food, I put that's on both sides because if you share food, then yes, that is cheaper if you go with someone else. But if you don't because you have specific dietary requirements or don't like to share your food, which is fine, then it's the same. You're just catering to your own needs, whether you're on your own or with a person. So I just want to highlight that depending on your preferences and your needs, it can be cheaper to travel by yourself, or sometimes it can be cheaper to travel with another person. When I went on the trip to the UK, I considered getting a car, but because of the weather and because I am not a confident driver in all kinds of weather, I said, no, let's not do that. One, because of the cost, and two, because of the confidence factor of driving the wrong side of the road in possible snow in February. So I was like, no, I don't need that added stress. So I considered something and opted for something else. So what I did was go to places that had train lines to them and use those as representative examples for my research. So it doesn't need to stop you doing something. You just need to find a way to do it differently, if that makes sense. So questions about money. CatPaw's point about the single supplement is this, and if you haven't gone traveling on your own, you may not even know what this is, but often when you travel, at least in Europe, the tradition, the regular practice is to charge per person per night rather than per room. So if you are used to getting a double room in a hotel and it costs $100 a night in the US, what that would be in the UK, at least when I have gone, is £50 per person per night. And they assume two people if it's a double bed or twin beds or whatever. And if you are not traveling with a second person, you don't get to just get the room for £50 because they could be getting it at a higher price. You have to pay a single supplement, which is usually like 15. So it would be like £65 per night. So in that case, it's more expensive to travel alone unless you can find a single room. I tried to do this last trip cheaply on my own, and I did find single rooms in the 2 nights that I spent in London. They were pretty crap both times in different places. It was the same type of establishment, and there were noises and smells and inconveniences. It was kind of fun. It was kind of funny. Whatever. What are you gonna do? You're already there, and it's safe, so it's not world ending. It's just not the best situation ever. So that's the single supplement. But let me know if you have other questions about money and what might be more expensive or less expensive, things that you're worrying about if you're traveling solo. I'm going to use that opportunity to take another sip. My throat's scratchy. Okay, not seeing any questions on that. I'm going to pass over to the second big contributor, which is fear and safety, which is sort of two sides of the same coin. So I will say that whether you are traveling solo or traveling in a pair, depending on where you go, there's always a concern that something could happen to you, whether that's violent crime, which is not very common, or accidents and injury, which is why people get insurance. And Catpaw had a comment about the travel insurance option, which I never get, but you might consider if you think through a situation where, if I break my ankle on cobblestone somewhere and I have to go to a hospital, I would rather have the peace of mind that anything that I've paid for will be reimbursed and I have that insurance than worry about it the whole time and not enjoy something because of it. I hate insurance of all kinds because I think it's a racket. So I have lived this long in my life skating by, and I'm sure one day will come when I need it. But if I'm not required to pay it at this point, I'm not paying it. So yeah, so not ditchy. What's the word? Sketchy. Sketchy is the word I was looking for. Sketchy encounters, precautions to take. So what I said is, it's always a concern whether you're alone or with another person. If, as a woman traveling alone, you're thinking, well, if I went with a man who is a companion, I would be protected. Well, possibly, but I don't have that option when I'm traveling because I don't have a dude who is ready to accompany me when I'm ready to go do things. And so that means that if I want to go do things, I have to research where I want to go, if it's safe, if it's my comfort level of safety, let's say, and then take precautions and plan accordingly. So some places I have not gone because I've heard things about violence against foreigners, but some places I have gone and it's fine. I've seen things on TikTok where people are rating safety feeling for women, and it's surprising. People's inner compass or inner thermometer, or whatever you want to call it, for safety is triggered by different things. So you kind of have to do your research, which means look at guidebooks, read travel blogs for recent years and people's experiences in the places where you want to go. If you're not okay walking at night, plan to do your things during the day and have somewhere nearby to go. If you're not okay walking long distances, then make sure you know the transport system and how you're going to take advantage of it. When I say precautions, I'm thinking of specifically two things that I wrote down in advance. So if you've researched the location and you're not going to any place that is like a hotspot for kidnapping, for example, like the next piece is being discreet with your money. So if you're a tourist and it's obvious because you don't look like the people who are in the area where you're going, then I would say be discreet when you're dealing with money. So you're not wearing lots of gold and you're not wearing your purse like open, dangling, it's just sort of being aware in your environment. Um, Ever since I've been traveling, I've had when I go through the airports and I'm on travel days, and when I'm in international places, that's just a superstition, I guess. I have one of those compass pockets, not compass, compass, passport. Come on, brain. Passport pockets that goes under your clothing. It's not a big deal. I'm not a big, fashionista. So if the thing that I have like a little cord popping out of my t-shirt, like someone could look for that and go, "Oh, that's a tourist and they're hiding a bunch of money." That has never happened in my many trips and travels. And it just makes me feel safer that I have my passport and I have emergency money on me if, something ever got stolen or I left it somewhere, which has happened, like my phone. Um, and so whatever your inner compass makes you feel more safe and more, secure, I say use that, money belt or a passport pocket or whatever you want to call it. So that's one thing, being discreet with money. And then the other thing is observing local customs. So even if you're sticking out and you don't look like the people who live there, let's just take France, for example. French people in Paris can spot an American tourist, moi, like 30 paces off, right? It has to do with your footwear choices and your seasonal clothing and the simplicity of clothing and the logos present. There's all sorts of things that Americans consider normal that Parisians would not, and they would be able to tell the difference. So if you're trying to blend in and not stick out, like look around at what people are wearing and wear simpler things that are not calling attention to the fact that you're out of place. I always find that scarves are good for this. I have quite the collection of scarves. Ask anyone who's been to my house. Yeah, so scarves are really helpful. Um, and also, if you're in a place that has different layers of modesty expectations for women, as a woman, I've had to look into this. Like, if you're supposed to cover yourself when you go into a mosque, if there's a big mosque and it's a tourist attraction, they let foreigners in, then be respectful of that and cover your head, and you won't attract attention. Um, I'm basically saying be aware of your environment, and if you conform with the things, and again, guidebooks will tell you this, like women tend to wear skirts instead of pants, or don't show your bare upper arms in the city center because it's around a lot of religious buildings and people who are highly religious, for example, and that's part of their creed. It's just being aware, doing your research, and honoring the culture that you're visiting, because after all, you're trying to learn about what you're visiting. At least that's what I do when I'm traveling. And so I like knowing more about the world and feeling like I can fit in more places. That's part of the delight in traveling solo for me, is um, learning about other cultures and imagining living there. I don't know if other people do that, but yeah, could I fit in here? And often the answer is no, like permanently, but it's interesting to see how people differ and the ways in which they, find joy in the same things as well. That's always a delight when I'm traveling. Um, oh, got a good question. Okay. So Nicole Luna is asking about thoughts on Airbnb compared to renting a hotel room. So this can get um, political as well as just a cost benefit analysis, because back in the day, Airbnb used to be a deal, and it was a deal for the people offering the service as well as the people using the service. But fast forward 20 years, The prices are comparable. The services are not necessarily. It's wildly varying, I find. I haven't used Airbnb in years. So I would say at this point, I often would do a hotel room instead of Airbnb because um, the hotel is liable for things happening, so they have more of an interest to keep you safe and happy, and like are more professionals at doing it. Whereas Airbnb, not only are you a degree removed from like the corporate liability structure and the trying to keep you safe and happy, but you also, if anything happens, have to go through the person who's renting the room to you or the bedroom, um, and then get to the corporate overstructure. So it's just more fraught with possibilities of saying, "Oh, that's not our fault. Sorry, you're out $300, and we couldn't do anything about it." That's what I would say in America and Europe, and I don't have experience trying Airbnbs in other places. So that's my thought. Cat Paws thoughts. I found Airbnb are often off the beaten track, i.e., long walks or taxi to get to. Easier with GPS, but still. Yeah. One of the points that Cat Paw made in her long comment was about how much easier things are to navigate with smartphones and GPS, which is very true. So Airbnb is often findable using Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever you want to use, right? And that is one of my secret tools is Google Maps. So if I'm looking to visit a place and I've researched it and I go, oh, I really want to go to this neighborhood or stay in this neighborhood, I'll just sort of like hunt around on Google Maps and look up bed and breakfast or cheap hotel or whatever, or just hotel, because cheap hotel probably wouldn't. It's a quality thing, and Google Maps isn't gonna compute that. But that's how you find places. I mean, if it's a liability to be off the beaten track and have a long walk or a long taxi, which is expensive, then you'll want to stay in the center or near an attraction that you're going to be spending a lot of time with. So you have a couple options to look at and then compare. But if you want that, then I would say, let's see, if you want to be somewhere more remote, well, it could be. So I'm traveling in Scotland, right? And so a lot of the beautiful parts of Scotland are going to be remote. They're going to be lodges. They're going to be on hunting forest land or whatever. And I've considered some of these. Of course, a lot of them are way out of my price range, so it's just a moot point. But sometimes there's a couple I flagged that, like, if I ever wanted to just stay in one place, the way I would approach that is looking at the reviews, communicating with the venue to make sure like a person is responding to me so that I know they're friendly and like have evidence that they're responsive, so I get a good feeling about the place before I get there. Because otherwise, you could arrive and be stuck somewhere where the people aren't helpful and you don't like the situation, and then you sort of ruined your first step on the vacation. So that would be unfortunate. But that would be my approach to if you wanted someplace off the beaten track. Safer and easier to find, I find. I think she's talking about hotels, I think, back a little further in the discussion. And then Luna says, I agree, traveling is a fun way to experience different cultures and to see how they treat those with disabilities. That's true. That's true. Hopefully it's not a litmus test and it's not like, oh, upvote, downvote, but hopefully they are working on making things accessible and have the spirit of trying to reach out to people traveling. That would be the best. Jocelyn stepping away. Okay, thanks, Jocelyn. Hotels, yeah, easier to find for sure. Okay, so safety. We did research, use your guidebooks, use your reviews, money, be discreet, and however that manifests for you. Observe the local customs. So again, research and try to be aware what is acceptable and what is attracting attention, and modify your behavior if necessary. And then the last thing I would say about taking precautions for safety is know your emergency plan. So Like if someone grabbed your backpack and tried to run away, what is your plan? Like if you can't help looking like a tourist and you stand out and someone desperate is going to try to steal something from you, rob you. What is your plan? Are you going to make a fuss? This is like a bear or tiger situation. Are you going to make a fuss and like attract attention in the street because you think people will help and stop the thief? Or are you going to sort of freeze, let them take whatever they want, and you have your travel insurance and you're okay with just recouping and, feeling safe and letting them go? Um, I've only had this happen once, and it was in Paris. And I was on one of the bridges, and I had my phone in my back pocket, and I can't remember what I was doing. I had a backpack and a phone, right? And someone came up to me, and they had a clipboard, and they were asking about something, and I think they were asking in English, so they could tell I was not French. But then I felt someone take the phone out of my pocket because they were working. Was it two or was it one? No, I think it was one. But he was trying to talk to me and like take the phone out without me looking while I was busy with something. And so I I don't know what I did. I think I wrote about it afterwards, but I remember making a big fuss and speaking in French and like yelling at him and having some attitude and like grabbing it back out of his hand because I could obviously see it. So obviously he wasn't a very good thief. But afterwards I had like adrenaline and I, hadn't thought about it beforehand. Um, but yeah, if you have I don't want to risk them having a weapon or something, and that's what you're afraid of, then, be very careful where your valuables are. If you are in a populated center and it's something like a bridge in the Paris city center, I think you're pretty safe making a big deal and attracting attention because they don't want to get hauled up by the cops. But if you're somewhere out of the way of pedestrian traffic and you're more afraid, therefore, then I would say it's totally valid to step back and, run away or get somewhere else before you take action. I think knowing what your comfort level is and what the situation might require is part of being aware and, having not having to think about what to do. So yeah, it's only happened once. and, and I was pretty proud of how I reacted. It doesn't happen often. I've been on 10 trips, 12 trips in 10 years. And that's the only time. So I wouldn't let fear of being a target or having something stolen frighten you out of going somewhere new. I would say take your precautions, be discreet, have a backup supply, separate your things so that they can't get everything at once. I even think of that when I'm walking around Portland. I will put my wallet in my pocket of a jacket and then a phone in a jeans pocket and a key in a pants pocket. Like I spread things out so that if someone grabbed a backpack or a purse, like they're getting my journal, like have fun with that. Which is probably more valuable, right? It's irretrievable, but yeah, so I think just like being strategic with things like that is useful. And that's all I have for safety fear stuff. So let me give another sort of pocket for people to ask questions about feelings of safety or having specific fears. Because I got a lot of people just saying fear. So maybe I'm not getting at the fear that you're exactly meaning to say. So if, speak now or put it in the comments afterwards. Luna, Nicole says, yeah, you have to be careful with those offering to help carrying your luggage or taking pictures. Like you said, be aware of your surroundings. Yes, and unfortunately, that's a great example of something that unless you've seen it happen or had it happen to you, you may not be aware that this is a scam. So just like people calling with extended warranties for your car, if you've heard about it, you can hang up. It's a spam call. But if you don't know, maybe you think people are being nice, and it's terrible to have to guard against that. But yeah, that's why I think travel blogs are useful, because the more recent ones will tell you, oh, look at this thing that happened, and hearing other people's travel stories from specific places would be really helpful. So like forums, Lonely Planet forums, for example, stuff like that. Andrew's here. Missed my alarm, missed out on the first 26 minutes. Here and ready to learn. Welcome. So I'm just pausing. I'll take another sip of water. Questions about fear or safety. Kappa's got a great point. You can always sew pockets on the inside of your clothes that only you can get to for emergency money, keeping passport safe, etc. Yeah, so you don't have to get a specific passport pocket. My fleece jacket, which is 15 years old, has pockets, and in the interior, the pocket is not sewn up on top, so that's where I put my wallet when I go out, because you can't get it unless you unzip and put your hand in. So that one I didn't have to sew, but that's a good idea. Okay. Angie's asking, have you ever been harassed for just being American? There's the stereotype that Europeans hate Americans, but I'm not sure how true that is. So I would say that's not true. I would say they maybe have contempt for Americans, and I talked a little bit earlier about certain things that Americans see as normal in terms of dress and in terms of interacting in public places that are different from the norms in other places. So, speaking loudly, or I don't know. That's the first one that occurs to me. I already went over like the dress code. But I have never had it taken as, at least not that I knew of, like harassment. What I've heard from other travelers sometimes is that they'll refuse to talk to you or help you, which maybe they have the language, maybe they don't. A lot of Americans suspect that Parisians in particular do have the language but don't want to talk to you, which is, their choice. But yeah, I haven't been harassed. The other thing this makes me think of is like sexual harassment. Like if you're in Italy, and I think there was some of this going on in Eat, Pray, Love, the movie, where if it really shakes you up, if it agitates you, if it frightens you when you have sort of like hollering in the streets and that sort of thing. Number one, that happens in the US as well. So if you have a strategy here in the US, it's going to work probably just as well anywhere else. But number two, it's like the research thing, right? So if you're in forums and if you've looked at the places you want to go, there's blog posts about, oh, this is what happened when I went here, and listen to other traveler stories, because there will be tourist traps which you want to avoid, or there will be, places where there's a lot of scamming going on, like the Eiffel Tower and all that kind of stuff. And you find out when you poke around in guidebooks and travel forums. So that would be my advice. Okay. So we covered the top two restrictions or barriers. And the third one, which I haven't mentioned yet, is the grass is greener, right? So the reason you don't go solo is because it would be so much better if you had someone to go with. And I can understand this viewpoint. I have often yearned for a travel companion, especially a romantic one. We had a few people on the community post talk about how it's a better experience when you're traveling with someone else. Not only do you divide up the responsibilities and the packing, and you can feel safer, because if you have something go missing, like they will have another version or whatever. Then also when you come home, there's being able to share memories with someone that if you go by yourself you wouldn't. That is also a valid point. And I definitely understand this not compulsion, but this intention that you wouldn't go solo because you would rather go with someone else. However, this was my little response. This is kind of feeling like a little journal prompt. So, better with someone else. Yes, traveling can be better with someone else. It can also be a nightmare with someone else. It's kind of a roll of the dice, but so is life. And you don't want to live your life waiting to enjoy it with another person. And that's sort of my life philosophy, is that if I waited to travel with someone, I would have 5 trips that I never would have taken, and books that never would have been written, and lots of photos, thousands of photos that wouldn't have been taken, and people on my travels that I never would have met. So I think that my motto is life is uncertain, eat dessert first. And that goes for travel. Like, if you're waiting for someone else to fit into your life before you let yourself do something, then if that never happens and you can't control that, you're up creek and you never get to do the thing you wanted. So I would say eat dessert first, do the travel. Maybe that will lead you to a future travel companion, right? Because I would love to have a partner to travel with, a witness to share inside jokes after the travel is over, someone to share intimate moments with. But I've met no one who clicks in that way and can go with me on these trips, and so I'm not waiting. I don't know how much time I have on this earth, and I want to experience as much of it as possible. So if that means traveling alone, that means I do my research, I take my precautions, I budget as best I can, and keep experimenting to find what works for me. So I will go into, with practicalities, I will go into some of that experimentation in just a second. But that is my little preacher soapbox about waiting for other people. The other option is going with a group. So it could be a group of strangers, and it's sort of traveling solo because you're not going with anyone you know, but you might make friends. And of course, it might be terrible. But if you're new to it and you want to like be on the shallow side of the pool before you jump in the deep end, I think group travel is a great option because someone else is taking care of the logistics. Yes, you're paying for someone to do that, but then you get the experience. You can ask them about it. You can be more familiar the next time you go. And I think that's great. It's like practicing before you're doing those things yourself. And again, you have the chance to make friends. So I would say some package tours where you get hotel and airfare only, it's a good deal, like just money wise. But some package tours where you're also going to be in a group. For example, you have outings in certain cities on a minibus and you go to said site to see. I look very carefully at those itineraries. In fact, as a solo traveler, I look through a lot of those itineraries to consider how I'm going to plan my own trip because they're going to places that people want to visit. So I kind of check out, okay, well, how would I get there? If I'm not renting a minibus by myself, how would I get there, first of all? And is it worth, the travel and the expense to try it? But if you don't have any idea or there's too many things to choose from and you just want a sampler, I think group tours might be really helpful for people who are not yet ready to travel solo or like being with other people. But we'll come to the psychological piece in just a bit. Angie's asking for ketchup. Spread book joy. Hello, hello, Jack. I'd love to travel solo, but just don't have enough vacation time to do family and friend holidays as well as solo. Ah, okay. So another person brought this up as well. Also, my family would just be confused as to why I'm doing that. So that's even like outside of the whole arena of travel itself, that your behavior communicating to people around you, which is a whole interesting other subject. But yeah, limited time free, that's a good point, is that you have to, what's your priority, right? For a lot of people, family time and friend holidays mean that solo would take a back seats, right? Um, Interesting. I I don't know. Maybe Americans are less about friend holidays. I know some people do that, but it feels like it's more of a thing on TV. Um, I've only gone on a couple trips with friends because it just feels more uh logistically difficult because you're sharing the decision making with people who are not usual decision makers together about food, housing, and if you have different standards or needs or expectations, that's a lot to navigate. Yeah, but it has been fun when I have gone. Luna Nicole says would love to travel more, especially out of the US. Only been to London and Canada. And that brings up the language question, which we'll get to in the practicality section. Um, yeah, especially out of the US. Yes. Jack says, I've had at least 3 terrible holidays with friends and partners in the past. Beautiful destinations, tarred by wanting to get home and away from them as fast as possible. Okay, well, this is more grist for my mill of like maybe after those 3 experiences, you say, okay, the next opportunity is gonna be solo instead of friend travel. Yeah. Papa says that's why I started traveling on my own. I was tired of waiting for the right person. Right. I talked to well-traveled friends and took their advice and learned. And we're so happy. Yes, I love it. Jim says traveling solo, I prefer to stay in youth hostels, backpackers hostels, because you get to meet other travelers. I traveled solo in Northern Ireland in B&Bs, and it was less social. Okay, this is a great point. So, what type of accommodation do you seek out? So Nicole brought up Airbnbs versus hotels. There's also a whole range of other types. So I have stayed in youth hostels or backpackers hostels. The arrangements are typically different. So what you have to know going in is like, do you get a locker? Do you keep your valuables on yourself? That sort of thing, because you're going to be in a bunk sharing with a whole bunch of people in a room, or paying more closer to a hotel price for like a double room, which has 2 bunk beds or maybe 4, and you're, decreasing the risk, but you're still sleeping with strangers across from you. Part of it is just like culture. So, like I feel like sometimes you have to experiment and say, oh, well, I didn't grow up with sleeping with strangers in the same room. Maybe people did at boarding school, but maybe it's fine. If I'm a good sleeper, then I don't have much to worry about, and I'll try it out and see if it works, because then more options open. But if you never try it, you don't know. I will say I stayed in the hospital in Budapest, and my memory of that city is forever tarred, as Jack said, because I had my laptop stolen while I was sleeping in the afternoon, and someone ran out, and I ran after them, and they disappeared. So again, I went after them like I don't know, like I was James Bond, and unfortunately that time it didn't come to any good. They just disappeared, and I lost my laptop. But yeah, how to guard against that? I mean, that was 2007, so I mean, in 20 years, it's happened once that something got stolen. Um, and I had insurance. I had renter's insurance, which went over with me when I was traveling, so I got reimbursed for the laptop. Um, so yeah, hostels, different situation. You might want to try it and see if it's okay. If you have trouble sleeping, um, obviously that might not be the option for you. Bed and breakfasts. So I think when Jim was in Northern Ireland, it must have been a while ago. I've been in bed and breakfast in Ireland a while ago, and it was lovely. I've been in bed and breakfast in the UK, and they were lovely. But on this last trip, I tried to find bed and breakfasts, and because of the financial climate and the real estate unaffordability, um, No one is doing bed and breakfast anymore. The one that I stayed at, it was the breakfast is on the landing. I'm not cooking anything for you. I'm not talking to you unless you need something. And it was very on your own. So I feel like, at least in my experience in the UK and Ireland, there used to be great options of bed and breakfast, but because of economic changes and real estate markets, like people have secondary properties, but it's all self catering, which means you bring your own food, you take care of it. We're not going to be there. We'll give you a code to get the key and like make your fires yourself or whatever. And that's not my idea of fun, traveling on my own, because one of the benefits is meeting people more easily, and you don't meet anyone with self catering. So yeah, I didn't even budget time for talking about all the different types of places to stay, but that is fun, and that's a great point, Jim. So thank you. Luna says, for my mom's stress relief, I have to travel with my sister, which is a good thing we get along. Yes, if you have a good travel companion, then, you know, you're set. And it's good that you can help each other. Perhaps, like, you have different strengths and can take different responsibilities. Jim says, in Paris and London, pickpockets are attracted to areas popular with tourists, particularly when they arrive in the city, like Victoria Station in London or Gare du Nord in Paris. Yeah, because that comes in from the UK, I bet. Does it? Maybe. I think it does. The Eurostar. So yeah, so this is the sort of travel advice you would get in forums and guidebooks. Like I said, it can be very touristy areas or it can be very remote areas. So depending on which, you know, you're more worried about, it's a behavior modification. So you hide your stuff, you don't flaunt your stuff, you strategically divide up your stuff. And I think it's, again, just like America, you look purposeful and go where you want to go. None of this standing on the sidewalk, gazing around, you know, unless you have a camera. So yeah. Mama Maggie is stream hopping from Jewel Stream. Hello. JK Levo, hello. Maggie says, I used to travel alone, but that was in the late 1980s and 1990s. Wouldn't do it now. Interesting. Hostels, it depended on the feel of the hostel. Most USA ones just did not feel safe, so I car camped. Yeah, camping! That is not an option usually on the other countries, because you don't have your car with you. Yeah. Joanna's asking, how did traveling solo go? Where'd you go? Did you stay in an Airbnb? And you can rewind for my answers on the Airbnb because I covered that. And this traveling solo Q&A session was prompted by my trip to the UK in February, which was great. Jim says, I haven't stayed in hostels in America, but stayed in hostels going around Australia solo and met up with other travelers and would sometimes join them for a couple of days. Yes. See? One of Cat Paw's points was that it is easier for people to approach you, to be friends, if you're alone traveling. So if you are in your own little world, you're missing out on opportunities to form new links. So depending on what your goal is, depending on what you're feeling, you know, that can change on the trip. By trip, I should say, for each trip. And Nia's here. I wonder if that changed because COVID, the unsocial part of the B&B. I think that had a big part of it. I didn't even mention that. You're right. Because a lot of hotels had to close down and do all these extreme measures to be certified by the government, especially in the UK. They were very strict. People are like, this isn't worth it, man. I can't keep up. So Jack says, Gare du Nord is so dodgy. You have to be really careful there. In London, you never get your mobile phone out when you come out of the tube. People hang about waiting for people to do that. Wow. I don't remember Gare du Nord. I must have gone through it. I was probably there in Gare du Nord before we had cell phones. Just to be an oldie. Yeah, great points though. Great travel advice. Thank you guys. Maggie says, I always wanted to go and hike the mountains of Spain. The Camino de Camino Santiago de Compostela, I think that's called. I know a few people who have done that and life changing, very cool. I know one friend who has gone on hiking trips solo, and there are long trails. We have some in the US, but there's also some in the UK. And there are actually companies that will sort of hopscotch for you where they'll take your luggage, bring it to the next hostel, and you can walk your 50 miles or whatever and get there and camp in between. Um, so there are lots of people catering to all different logistical tastes and situations. So just Google, like I think you'll find an area, look up the trails if that's your thing, and then see if there's anyone who caters to that because I bet they will. Yeah, the snatch phones. Gotcha. Maggie says it's becoming not an option in many areas here in the USA. Are you talking about hostels? Because we were low on hostels to begin with, so I agree with that. Jim worked at McDonald's Gardiner for 3 years. So many tourists were robbed. Oh my gosh. There was little we could do but direct them to the local police station. Yeah. And then Jack says, yes, Gardiner is where the Eurostar goes from London. Okay. Yeah. Have you ever guested? I don't know what it's called now, but moving from area to area, staying in guest rooms of people from a region. It was a very churchy thing to do. Okay, so there are other networks that if you are looking to travel and your accommodations are not going to be hotel, B&B, hostel, another option, which we didn't cover, I didn't budget for, but this is also couch surfing. There's a few couch surfing became a site and like more formalized, but when you say it's a churchy thing to do, basically these rely on informal networks of like valued people who want to extend hospitality, and you may meet them through a third person, like, oh, I have a friend who lives here, and if you want to go there, maybe they ask. And basically you're trading on a trust network, right? So you're friends with this person, they know that person. If you trust them, they will trust you, kind of thing, which in this day and age is a hard thing to manage, but still possible, I think. Again, different level of comfort. You sort of have to deep within see if you're comfortable with that. Yeah, it's so rough there still, Jim. I recommend reading Pilgrims by Joanna Penn. I'm not sure what this is about to Maggie. Maggie asked, did you ever fear getting kidnapped? No. I did, even with a boyfriend at the time, cancel a plan to visit Egypt because it had just been bombed. So that did change travel plans, even with someone. I think I wouldn't have gone on my own there either, just because of like unrest at the time period. But I haven't been anywhere else that I'm afraid of getting kidnapped. That makes me think of more like Mexico and Central America, but Cat Paw would weigh in on that because I think you're in that area and could definitely give better on the ground advice. Car camping is being banned in many cities and state wildlife areas. Well, there's sleeping in your car and then there's car camping. Sleeping in your car is illegal in most places, I believe, but car camping is what I know to be having a tent and like parking in a spot and sleeping in the tent, which is allowed in different areas where there's like sites and stuff. Luna Nicole says, be respectful to the locals. Did a college trip to London. Lauren and I had an amazing time. The rest of our group got robbed due to being rude and not respecting their culture and disrespectful. Woo! Okay. Well, there you go. There's an interesting cautionary tale. Yeah. Maggie says, my middle and youngest want to solo travel, but Mama says no because of the risk of sex trafficking. Yeah. Well, like I said, going alone going with a friend or a partner is no guarantee of safety as opposed to going solo. Like if you look at Taken, the movie, as evidence, she's with a friend in a hotel, and people plan things, and what are you gonna do? But that's a movie, so. Maggie says, Pilgrims by J. Penn is about a hike across the UK. The author also hiked across Canada. Oh, okay. Oh, this isn't about travel literature. If we were going to do a thing about travel literature, I could talk forever. Oh my gosh. My sister was almost kidnapped in Spain in the early 2000s. That's crazy. By a Spanish person? And did she raise a stink? And was it on the trail or was it in a city? Oh my gosh, that's scary. Sleeping in your vehicle is listed as car camping. Traveling by car and sleeping in a tent is called tent camping. And then if you're not using a car and you're using a tent, that's called backpacking, maybe? I think because there's like a difference there that I think maybe the language is a little ambiguous. Jim says, I stayed in Marco Polo Hotel in Budapest, had no problems. I should have stayed in a hotel. Yeah. And Camino, that is a follow-up to... Oh, I think that's another book recommendation, maybe? Jim was in Northern Ireland in 2007. Okay, so that was later than I was in Ireland. Okay. Colorado has really gotten specific. Yes, backpacking. Yeah, and that's, again, a whole other reason why. Okay, so let me wrap this up by our last two categories, right? Angie had lots of specific questions, which I'd like to address, which were about practicalities. So number one, I have two other videos that are about practicalities. So I wanted to share those. I did a recent video that is about author travel and how I planned my trip based on the research locations. And then I have a little older video that is about travel packing priorities, which she asked about specifically. So I'll just drop those links in the chat. But in terms of planning, I just made a new playlist called Travel Related. So feel free to explore that. The key resources I use when planning a trip, if it's going to take an airplane, I use Kayak, which is a comparative travel site. So it will flip through all the different airlines sites and the discount sites to give you the cheapest price. It also tells you the route, which layovers, etc. And so you can compare based on what your priorities are. So for me, I always try to take a direct flight because to me, taking two flights is like twice as bad for the environment because all of the pollution is in takeoff and landing. So I flew to London straight, like direct, because then I could take the train to Scotland. And yes, it did eat up 2 days of my itinerary, but that was worth it for me not having to take a layover. And also, when you're going that direction, layovers put you at a weird 3 a.m. layover time, and you're awake in the middle of the night, and it's disorienting, and I didn't need that. So figure out what your priorities are in terms of comfort preferences, and then get your search engines. Number one, you can set alerts. So if you have a specific flight path on Kayak, for example, I'm going to St. Louis, Missouri this summer, and I want to go July 29th, and I'm looking at it, and it's $91, and I'm wondering if it's going to go cheaper. I put a flight alert on it, and there's a place on the website where you can say get alerts, and if it goes down or if it goes up, they'll send you an email saying your flight just went up or down, and that'll help you decide if you buy it now or not. Instead of obsessively checking, they can do that for you, which is great. And the second thing about Kayak and flights was use it in an incognito window. So I'm not sure if it's a different name in a different browser. I use Google Chrome, and if I'm going to search for flights, I use an incognito browser, which is just like you go up to File, and instead of New tab, New window, the third option is New incognito window. That means that you're turning off all the cookies that normally people would have attached to your searching. And that means people can't see, oh, you searched for this 3 times already. I'm going to hike up the price on you, because they do that because they're dastardly. So those are the 2 pieces of advice I would use for airfare searching on Kayak. Okay. And then the other one I alluded to earlier was Google Maps and Google searching. So when I am looking for accommodations, websites are very incomplete, right? Google Maps is also incomplete, but from a distance, if you haven't been to a place, there's not much you can do about it. So when I look for bed and breakfast, I'm on Google Maps and I search bed and breakfast around a specific town. And they have little tiny dots that show up, and I click on those, and then they either take me to a site or they take me to like Google's own reviews. And if they have reviews on a consolidator site like bnb.com, you'll see those. Sometimes the really small ones don't have their own website. Sometimes the small ones have a website but no way to pay. You have to pay through bnb.com. And so you kind of have to navigate that. But if you want more choices and you want like an individual, unique experience, which is always what I'm looking for, then I just like take my time and look all around and like, what about this suburb? What about that suburb? What about next to this forest park? And this is why I was so disappointed in not being able to find a B&B, but I think it's just the time. Okay, so back to the chat for a bit. Oh, yeah, Nia had a comment. I think what's being made illegal is people living in their car and calling it car camping, maybe. This sounds right. I know sleeping in your car was illegal back when my parents got married because they didn't have a place for their honeymoon, and the first night was in the car, and they got not loaded. They got the knock on the car window when they were trying to sleep. And that was the first night. So it's illegal even back in 1969. But yeah, living in your car is probably more enforced these days. Ketpus says, I was watching a video about the Buen Camino Trail, and most of the towns on it are dying. Interesting. Maggie really wants to retire to northern rural Spain. So pretty. And then Angie says she was in southern Spain, but I don't remember the exact location. A couple of locals realized she was being scoped out, and they accompanied her until the would-be kidnappers left. Huh. If she didn't realize it and then people told her what was happening, like, that's scary. But, friendly locals. Interesting. Maggie says, glad they helped her. Yeah, for sure. The locals told her several female tourists had been kidnapped into Africa around the time she was visiting. Crazy. Maggie says, I warned people about using those sites for Colorado because the hotel taxes apply to B&Bs and such. Which sites for Colorado? Like hotels.com? You're gonna, if you're paying a hotel, I think you're gonna pay taxes anyway, in the US at least, and I'm sure in Europe with the VAT. So Nia says, I've only solo traveled in the US. It's a big place. And Angie says, yeah, she was completely oblivious until they warned her. The weird workaround to sleeping in your vehicle is to purchase a lot tag from some businesses. So there are places where you can park your car like a Walmart parking lot. I think that's what you're referring to. Interesting. Okay. So planning, my 2 tips are Kayak and those 2 pieces of advice, and Google Maps and like slow scanning. That's my research brain going overboard. Angie asks about spontaneity. Okay, so this is where I talk about experimenting, and we're over time. This is okay. I'm gonna finish this. um, so in 2016, I think I've gone on 3 or 4 big trips on my own, organized them, pretty happy about it. And what I realized was I was scheduling every minute and it was feeling a bit frenetic and busy and not free. And every once in a while you want to just like chill and be free and relax. And so, as an experiment, I arranged a trip to Sicily and Naples. So I was visiting a friend in Naples and I stayed with her there. And then I went to Sicily as part of it and came back and went back up and then home. And on this trip, I definitely coordinated with a friend about staying and like things I wanted to do. And I think I had one appointment with like a cooking school lesson, which was cool. But Sicily, I didn't have accommodations. I was trying to see if I had traveled enough that I would be okay going with the flow. But number one, I don't speak Italian. Number two, Italy is well known for having train strikes. And number three, I am not the personality who likes having things up in the air and handling them when I'm tired. That just doesn't fly. So I like to have the basics out of the way, the plane, the big train, so I don't have to miss the train because I didn't have a ticket because it was full. The hotel, wherever I'm staying, and that sort of thing. What I can leave up to chance are like where I'm eating, what I'm seeing each day, like how many things I try to go see, and that sort of thing. But like where I'm staying and how I'm getting there, I sort of need to have set up beforehand, and that's a personality thing. So in terms of spontaneity, this is a know thyself type, personality dependent question, and maybe you need to do an experiment to see, or maybe you've had travel with friends and you know, because your interactions with other people have proved beyond a doubt, you need to know where you're laying your head at night. Because if it comes 10 p.m. and you're knocking on doors asking if some hostel has a bed, like you're not a happy camper. No. And so then next time. So I did that trip to Sicily, and while staying with a friend and being in Napoli was gorgeous, I was really stressed about getting the train back because there were strikes, and I was more stressed about where to stay in Sicily because it wasn't tourist season. They shouldn't have been booked up, but like I couldn't find any places because my phone wasn't working. So I walked up to people and like asked, and I think what I did have was an internet connection to look up a hostel. So then I called them with like change at a telephone booth and was like, do you have space? Where are you? Because I can't find the map, that sort of thing. So, I met a couple nice girls who were visiting from America. They were university students, and it was nice, but it was just stressful to get there. So I know that about myself, and you may have to find that for yourself. Language. Next question is about language. So where have I been where I didn't speak the language? Italy, China, Japan, Greece, Turkey, Bulgaria, Russia. I've been plenty of places where I didn't speak the language. Oh, good night, Jim. Après midnight here in Tbilisi. Good luck with the Georgian readathon. I hope it's going well. So where I don't speak the language, here are my tips. Know your guides, right? So I've been to plenty of places where the main reason for going is that I know someone there, right? So, for example, Naples. I mean, of course, who doesn't want to go to Italy? But I went to Naples specifically because I knew someone who was there and they could be a guide. Of course, you don't want to presume on this, but this was an excellent match in this case. And so know your guides. If you know someone you're visiting who's living there, make that at the beginning of the trip so that they can give you advice and tips and show you around. Then you have an orientation. then you can sort of plan, oh, okay, well, this is my priority. I'm going to do this tomorrow. And then these other things may come next on the line. And that is where you can set off. If you don't have anyone there, but you really want to see this culture, then I would say look into guides, because lots of countries have networks of tour guides, whether that's a big city or people who are going to drive around and like be a little tour company. And so Google search will help you with that. I have a sister-in-law who speaks Japanese and has learned some English, because my brother speaks English, but he also speaks Japanese. And the last few times we have interacted and visited, her English has been better than our Japanese, my family's. But you know what really helps is Google Translate. So if you've got Google, what is it? It's not Chrome. I think it's when you search on Google. So whatever your browser is on your phone, you search Google Translate and it will give you a website where you enter a word in, or you speak a word, speech to text, and it will translate it. You can hold it up and it'll have it in Japanese characters so the person can understand you. That's if like it's something really detailed or very specific that you want. A lot of things can be understood by hand signs, body language, pointing, so don't be afraid. Like, one of the things about travel is that don't be afraid to look like a fool, because you're going to have to, and just get over it and enjoy yourself. I think that's part of the fun. If you're looking for directions to places, a lot of times people want to be helpful. Sometimes just like a photo. If you can't pronounce the name, a photo of the place and like a question, where is it? People will help direct you to this. Hopefully they're not the kind that wants to be helpful more than accurate, and they know where they're directing you, but that's another topic. And if it's timetables or other specific things and you don't have Google Translate, I would just say ask people. Again, you sort of have to get over the fear of not being understood. I asked maybe like 3 people in very bad Italian when I was standing on that train platform, hoping that I would get a train that would take me back in time to get my plane. And finally, I found someone who knew enough English that they could tell me that the strike was on, but they were thinking it would be over at this time. So I was like, okay, so we're waiting and we're watching, and hopefully we'll be okay. But you have to ask people. You have to get out of your comfort zone. So that's my advice on language. Packing. So the link that I put up, the second one, is about packing priorities, but just a quick review, I would say you want to go with layers, because you'll be mixing and matching to take as little clothing as possible. You'll be re-wearing clothes. Invest in a few scarves. I can tell you it's worth their weight in gold because they're very light. Be prepared for rain, depending on the weather where you're going. Make space for souvenirs. I did a whole post about leaving room for all the books that I was going to bring back. So if you know you're going to get books where you go, leave space. Have alternate footwear. So you don't want to be wearing the same, especially new shoes every day. So normally I would have like a good walking pair of shoes that are broken in, and then slippers for being at home, or sandals if we're going in the shower or the pool, or boots for changing into for dinner, so that my feet have a break from the walking shoes and don't get sore or blisters or whatever, because I walk a lot. Like some of the days around Glasgow I was walking like 20 miles a day, and yeah, you need to give your feet a break from the same format. It's like sitting in a seat for the same time in an airplane. You need to like get an adjustment. Alternate footwear. Pajamas. Sometimes I forget pajamas, and then I have to like take some of the clothes and allocate them as pajamas, so don't forget those. And then when you're going through airports, liquids and electronics, when necessary, are segregated, and there's very specific rules, so you have to look those up beforehand. So that's the very quick packing primer. Check the video out for more at-length discussions. And then eating out and loneliness. So this goes back to what I started the discussion with, which is social disapprobation. And this is a psychological side. So let me put this down and we'll wrap it up. So if it's intimidating to travel alone because you feel people are judging you, or they are pitying you, or they are suspecting you of nefarious activities because you're not conforming to their idea, who cares? You are having your own experience. And I think part of the joy of traveling alone is being comfortable enough with yourself that you stop worrying about that, or at least try. So I think part of the benefit of eating out alone, for example, there have been blog posts on this. There have been serious news outlets talking about eating out alone. It's a phenomenon. So like definitely feel free to explore this. But what it forces you to do is slow down, be present, and like notice things, right? So that's part of my advice of getting through this. If it's excruciating, you know, your options are you can try to, I can't think of the word, but make it less alone, less scary by eating at the bar, because then you can talk to the bartender as they're passing by and you feel less exposed. That's like shallow end of the pool strategy. You can sit at a small table so that you're not like taking up too much space, because you don't want the waitstaff to be angry at you because you're not paying more than the table would, you know, usually pay. You could try, at some places they have communal tables. So if you have one long table, they're not expecting it to have 20 people, but you can just sit yourself down, and then maybe you meet people because they're, you know, eating at the same time as you and you're commenting on the menu or why you're there, etc. So again, when you're alone, you're easier to approach for other people, and just let that be your own credo. If someone else is alone, why not approach them and be friendly and start a topic, right? Just an outlay, a whatever the word is for putting something out there without guarantee of reward. So what you would do when you're eating out to sort of keep away this exposed feeling is notice things. So just like when you're on a live stream, what are you noticing? You're multitasking. You're looking at the comments. You're looking at the banners. You're thinking of what you're saying. You're also going to hydrate. And if you order a glass of wine at a restaurant, take a sip. Be present. Take a drink of water. I drink a lot of water at restaurants. Hydrate. Always a good idea. Treat yourself. So this is part of the cardinal benefit of solo travel. You don't have to compromise. So if you have a glass of wine, if you have a dessert, if you have 2 appetizers, whatever you're looking for, like, it's going to hit the spot and feel like a treat and just fill you with joy and delight. Go for it. And then appreciate it. Like, be aware where you are in the moment. This is amazing. I can't believe someone made butterscotch pudding taste this amazing. I've done that before. Listen. Maybe you can overhear other conversations. Maybe you can hear what's going on in the kitchen and imagine like what work is going into these masterpieces. Just be aware. Smell. Oh goodness. Like, there are going to be such good smells in a restaurant, right? Maybe not. I don't know. Hopefully so. Ask. So ask your server about the specials, about local specialties, about holidays that are happening. Ask the person at the table next to you, oh, that looks really good. What did you get? It could be interpreted as American nosiness, but it's also general candor and curiosity. I don't think it should get you harassed or judged or anything. If someone is not open to it, they'll just say no and be very clear about it, I bet. Enjoy. So enjoy where you are at the moment and the privilege and the treat of enjoying the good food. If it's not good, record. Drink that water and record. So I usually take photos of my food as like a record. I also usually write in a journal. So this is sort of a cheat because it's like bringing a book to a bar, but also like you're recording your feelings and you're being present in the moment. So I really value journaling and taking photos as things that are catching my eye and documenting the process of this new experience. So I think being in the vanguard of people being present and slowing down and counterculture is like a strong position to be in. And I would advocate that. If people think you're weird or give you weird looks or whatever, like that's their problem. So if you can work yourself into that mindset, I think you'll enjoy a lot more about travel and restaurants and other things. Oh, okay. What did I miss to finish out this live stream? Okay, Maggie's talking about the booking sites. Taxes can be as high as $100. Yep, you gotta read through the fine print. Not Walmart. They've banned all lot camping. Oh, okay. A fire killed 2 kids and they got sued. Okay, well, then this is not an option, I would say, that you want to pursue. Question, do you always ask the locals what to see when you get there? Where is the best restaurant? I normally don't because I do a fair amount of research before. So, there are probably things that I've missed because of this, but if I'm reading about a place and I'm looking at Google Maps and I'm scanning itineraries for group tours and seeing what's popular, like, and I don't know anyone there to ask, then I don't walk up to a stranger and ask, what do you see? Because I've seen this as an American stereotype in movies. What is there to see around here? And like, it can come off as presumptuous, as in you're not recognizing the beauty around you or whatnot. And, you know, there's obviously a spectrum. But yeah, where's the best restaurant? Sometimes, as in the US, abroad, I will ask, like, where would you recommend for dinner? Something like that. That just it takes advantage of making a connection with someone in the moment. Maybe it's a tour guide, maybe it's a ticket taker, you know, someone who seems open to it. But I don't always find those people when traveling, so it just depends. Do you switch to local soaps and shampoos as soon as you get there? No, actually, with the liquids thing, I try not to pack liquids except unless I really need them. So like a shampoo soap that's just one in a tiny little bottle, and then I hope that the places that I'm staying provide them. They may not be local, they may be just cheap run of the mill. I don't really care. I don't have to do anything special. So if you do have to do something special and have to bring your own, make sure you get the right size. And make sure you double bag because you don't want an explosion of liquids or creams in your bag. Maggie says, the most stressful trip I ever had was going from Denton, Texas Women's University to South Padre Island for spring break. The New Yorker with us wanted to buy a jackalope from a San Antonio gas station. Oh, God. It sounds like it's the people that made it stressful. Do you or would you plan trips around festivals? Oh, that's a good question. I did not even consider. Normally, because I'm a budget traveler, I do not choose festivals for traveling times because everything is more expensive, everything is harder to find. And so a lot of times I just say I'd rather experience the place at its normal rather than at its most hyped. I don't like hype. I am allergic to hype, Maggie. You know this about me. Angie says, don't be afraid to look like a fool. Looking like a fool is one of my biggest fears. Yeah. I think I'd be a terrible solo traveler. Oh, well, what would be like the shallow end of the pool metaphor, like for solo travel? When you go on a group package tour, you are sort of traveling on your own. So maybe that is the first step where you have like the guardrails, but you don't like immediately make a friend and cling to that person the whole trip. If you make a plan to be like, I'm going to record this. I'm going to go out on my own for the dinners. And, you know, not be a bitch to people to make them stay away, but just make it clear that you want to go off on your own and do things, then you can try it, see how it goes. Do you ever do laundry when you travel? Yes. Yes. Where did I? Not in 1 week. So 1 week, I would say you don't need to do laundry. You can pack in the smallest possible bag for 1 week. Don't even worry. Oh, the overpacking question I skipped. I haven't overpacked, but I have brought things that I didn't use, and that makes me angry, but whatever. It's like 1 or 2 things, and I make peace with myself. Carrying luggage that was too hard. Yes, I've had various luggage over the years that was uncomfortable to travel with. I had a laptop bag, and then I had like not a backpacking thing, but like a duffel that you could wear as a backpack that I thought would be easier than a rolling suitcase. It was not. You always go with the small roller, especially flexible is better because it can fit in places. No matter how small they make their overhead bins. So that's what I would recommend. Rolling small. Look up the dimensions for the carry-ons, and then you're good to go. But if it's longer than a week, and several trips I had were about 2 weeks, then I would count on being at a place that lets you do laundry. For example, they will usually say this. If you're some Airbnbs let you do laundry, and some I'm trying to think. Bed and breakfasts will. Friends definitely will. So if you're staying with a friend into your itinerary, that is optimal. But yeah, I do laundry, and I don't bring soap. Like that's something you can always get in a single supply while you're there. I like eating alone at restaurants. And Nicole says parking photos is a plus to have memories and can make it easier to see if you're at a museum or tour. I'm not sure parking photos what that means. In the Middle East, it's easier to avoid the pickpockets if you smell like you might be from near there. Jasiva, hey. Maggie says, my daughters want to go to a pickle festival in Japan. They're obsessed with... Oh, and I don't like pickles, but what is a mom to do? Oh, pickle festivals. Well, so there were obviously things I couldn't cover, and I'm already very late to meet my friend on the other side of the river. So I will have to close this off now, but continue to ask your questions down below in the comments, and I'll definitely get back to you all. Thank you so much for submitting questions and being curious and wanting to know. And I hope this has been at least a little helpful and encourage you to try maybe like a baby step here, a baby step there, and see if there's a mode of solo travel that would work for you, because I think its benefits are so tremendous and delightful. So I hope everyone can access them at some point in some way. So thanks everybody. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.